Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. President Biden expands mask mandates. Find out where the new rules apply. Inauguration riots erupt, but not from the group that federal agencies warned about. We look at the cities that got another destructive visit from Antifa. President Biden's pick for defense secretary faces senators' questions about his views on China. In this show, we'll hear about his plans for countering the threat from China. And U-Haul awards Tennessee with the title of the #1 growth state of 2020. The state saw the largest net gain of U-Haul trucks crossing its borders last year, a sign that more people are moving in. In another series of executive orders, President Biden says Americans must wear masks when they travel. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on the rule and the kinds of transportation it applies to.
It doesn't matter where you are. President Biden's new order says you must travel with a mask on when using interstate public transportation.
Today, we'll be signing an additional executive action to extend masking requirements on interstate travel, like on trains, planes, and buses.
This EO was one in a series he signed after revealing his strategy to handle the CCP virus pandemic. Part of that order requires overseas travelers to test negative before heading to the United States. Biden says this is because of the newer COVID-19 variant.
In addition to wearing masks, everyone flying to the United States from another country will need to test before they get on that plane, before they depart, and quarantine when they arrive in America.
Biden's strategy includes getting people vaccinated and using the Defense Production Act, which will force companies to make vaccines, tests, and personal protective equipment. Reopening schools is also part of the strategy. Biden challenged Americans to wear a mask for the next 99 days. To get his strategy going, the president is asking Congress for $1.9 trillion. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
Protests erupted across the West Coast after President Biden's inauguration ceremony yesterday. Though FBI warnings were previously about far-right violence, the damage and unrest came solely from the far left.
Antifa marched through the streets in protest of President Biden's inauguration. In Portland, Oregon, the group held signs reading, "We are not governable." They smashed the windows and glass doors of the Democratic Party of Oregon office. Profanity and anarchy symbols were found sprayed on the building.
Some smashed windows and vandalized the building. Officers made selective arrests. 8 adults were arrested related to that event. Charges ranged from felony criminal mischief, possession of a destructive device, and riot.
Portland police listed an array of weapons seized from Antifa rioters, including Molotov cocktails, fireworks, knives, and pepperball guns. Antifa also marched on the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Building, better known as ICE. Police confronted the group of roughly 150 Antifa rioters there. Police confirmed with NTD that 15 people were arrested in Portland on charges that include rioting and reckless burning. In Seattle, Washington, Antifa marched on the iconic Pike Place Market. They left behind smashed windows at both retail stores and a federal courthouse. Walls were similarly vandalized with spray paint anarchy signs. Police said 2 arrests were made for the destruction. Local news stations KOMO said a 3rd arrest was made related to breaking glass at the original Starbucks location. In California, roughly 60 similarly dressed and equipped Antifa marched around the Capitol, according to the Sacramento Bee. No damage was reported. Police cited only a fence being knocked over. Reporting by NTD News, Seattle, Washington.
Of the 15 executive orders President Biden signed on his first day in office, rejoining the Paris Climate Accord is one of them. NTD's Grace Coulter speaks to a climate change expert about why the Paris Accord faces criticism.
On the campaign trail, Joe Biden said that if elected, he would rejoin the Paris Climate Accord on day one.
First thing I would do the day one as president, I'd rejoin the Paris Climate Accord.
Biden kept his word after getting sworn in, signing an executive order to rejoin. But this climate author and expert says this is not a good solution to a problem he agrees exists.
Global warming is a real problem, and he's right about that. But joining the Paris Agreement is not a good solution. It's actually an incredibly expensive solution to solve very little of the problem. And so if you really worry about global warming, he should be looking for much better, much more effective, and much less costly ways to fix the planet.
Bjorn Lomborg is president of the Copenhagen Consensus, visiting fellow at the Hoover Institution, and author. His latest book is False Alarm: How Climate Change Panic Costs Us Trillions, Hurts the Poor, and Fails to Fix the Planet. This title reflects his views on the Paris Climate Accord. Lomborg says even by the UN's own estimates, the Paris Agreement won't achieve what it set out to do.
UN's own estimates will cut so little, about 1% of what politicians have promised, that by the end of the century, if you run it through UN climate models, it'll only reduce temperatures by about 0.05 degrees centigrade. That's almost immeasurable. Yet the cost will be phenomenal. By 2030, we'll probably be paying somewhere between $1 and $2 trillion a year.
He says to pay so much to achieve so little is not a very good idea.
If you want to fix climate change, there's another way that we've learned for a long time, and which Biden is actually also emphasizing, namely innovate.
Lomborg says the trillions would be better spent investing in new technologies and forms of green energy. He says if new innovations allow for the cost of green energy to go down, then not only the U.S., but developing countries would be able to make the switch. According to Real Clear Energy, under the Trump administration, the U.S. saw its lowest carbon emissions since 1985. This because of the increased use of natural gas. Grace Coulter, NTD News, New York.
Videos from the Biden White House channel aren't doing so well at the moment. NTD's Miguel Moreno has more on how just about every video published so far on YouTube has over 10,000 dislikes, with a small fraction of support.
Starting from the inauguration to their first press briefing, videos from President Biden's White House channel are amassing dislikes, and it appears that a small fraction of reviewers are clicking the like button. His inauguration video, for example, got 24,000 dislikes.
Before God and all of you, I give you my word. I will always level with you. I will defend the Constitution.
6,000 likes. His press secretary's first press conference also not off to a good start, on YouTube at least.
So we had a very busy and active day today, as you all know.
17,000 dislikes to 4.6 likes. We don't know for sure why Biden's videos are doing poorly on YouTube. The comment section is turned off so users can't share what's on their minds. But looking back at President Trump's archived channel, the contrast is stark. The likes in his last 4 videos far exceed the number of dislikes. His farewell address on January 19th got 246,000 likes to 20,000 dislikes.
I want you to know that the movement we started is only just beginning.
YouTube Google whistleblower Zach Voorhees claims that YouTube has removed dislikes from Biden's White House videos. While writing this story, we took a look back at Biden's inauguration video and saw that it had about 2,000 less dislikes. In a statement, YouTube said that they have systems in place that remove engagement that they find to be spammy. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
A federal court just blocked an Obamacare mandate that forced Catholic doctors to perform gender reassignment surgeries. NTD's Christina Kim has those details.
District Court Chief Judge Peter Welty from North Dakota wrote the decision that protects some doctors from being penalized if they refuse to perform gender transition procedures on grounds of religious beliefs. In 2016, the Department of Health and Human Services, or HHS, issued a rule interpreting a section from Obamacare which prohibits certain forms of discrimination in healthcare, including sex discrimination. The new rule meant that insurers or third-party administrators couldn't exclude gender transition elements in their plans. This also meant healthcare providers were not allowed to refuse medical services for gender transitioning if they offered comparable services to others. An order of Catholic nuns, a Catholic university, and Catholic healthcare organizations challenged the mandate. Now, HHS and the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission can't enforce the Obamacare mandate. Judge Welty said the Catholic healthcare entity's refusal to perform or cover gender transition procedure is predicated on an exercise of their religious beliefs protected by the First Amendment. During his campaign, Biden vowed to cover care for LGBTQ Americans, including care to cover transitioning and surgery. Javier Becerra, who has been tapped by Biden to lead the HHS, previously argued in favor of using taxpayers' money to provide transgender individuals in North Carolina with coverage for gender transitioning surgery and treatment. Christina Kim, NTD News.
Americans' faith in their news outlets has sunk to a new low. Over half of Americans say they don't trust the media. NTD's Christina Kim tells us the ins and outs of a new poll.
A survey from Axios and Edelman shows more than half of Americans distrust traditional media. Trust in social media is at just 27%, a new low. New data from Edelman's Trust Barometer gives us a glimpse as to why, perhaps, Americans are so distrustful of mainstream media. 56% of Americans agree with the following statement. Journalists and reporters are purposefully trying to mislead people by saying things they know are false or gross exaggerations. 58% of Americans believe that most news organizations are more concerned with supporting an ideology or political position than with informing the public. After the 2020 election, only 18% of Republicans trust the media, while 57% of Democrats still have faith in them. This comes on the heels of another survey by Gallup and the Knight Foundation that found 86% of Americans see political bias in news coverage, 46% see a great deal of political bias, and 47% see a fair amount. But many say the media could heal those divisions at least a moderate amount or even a great deal. Christina Kim, NTD News.
Biden's pick for defense secretary affirms Communist China poses a threat to the country. NTD's Penny Joe has more.
During the Senate confirmation hearing, Senator Josh Hawley pressed retired General Lloyd Austin on if he would recognize China as the country's principal threat.
Can you commit to us that as you oversee the next NDS, that China will be unequivocally identified as the top challenge, threat, competitor of the United States?
Clearly, the strategy will be arrayed against the threat, and China presents the most significant threat going forward because China is ascending. Russia is also a threat, but it's in decline.
He characterized China as a pacing threat. He said he would update the national defense strategy to reflect that if he is confirmed. In 2018, the Trump administration published the National Defense Strategy. It stresses the need to prepare for high-end conflict with China and Russia. Austin said China has modernized its weapons and wants to become the world's preeminent power in the near future. He added the U.S. needs to start checking its aggression. Senator Hawley also asked about the plan to help Taiwan defend itself from China.
Again, we're committed. We've been committed to the support of Taiwan throughout, and again, it's been bipartisan support. We will remain committed to supporting Taiwan, and so we'll have the right options available to protect our interests.
Some China experts have expressed concern about Austin's lack of experience with Asia, saying his knowledge of the Middle East is not what the U.S. needs to deal with threats in the Indo-Pacific. Others argue the defense secretary does not need to be an expert on China, but rather a generalist with a broad vision. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
3 Chinese firms want the New York Stock Exchange to reconsider its decision to delist them. It delisted the companies earlier this month. The 3 firms are China Mobile, China Telecom, and China Unicom Hong Kong. The companies asked the exchange to review its decision. The NYSE was following an order by President Trump. It bars Americans from investing in companies Washington says have ties to the Chinese military. It's triggered a wide fallout, with U.S. investors quickly selling off stakes and index providers cutting them from their benchmarks. So far, nearly $6 billion has been wiped out from these companies' Hong Kong-traded shares. And the outgoing Federal Communications Commission chairman is warning regulators about the threat China poses to telecom networks. NTD's Patrick Hayden reports.
Outgoing Federal Communications Commission Chairman Ajit Pai says potential Chinese spying, threats to U.S. telecom networks and internet freedom are the biggest national security issues for the next 4 years. Pai says he's concerned about a wide array of activities from China, including surveillance and economic espionage. He also says China could potentially inject malware into networks in the US or abroad, and that bad things can happen when insecure equipment is used to handle sensitive information. Pai joined the Trump administration in January 2017 and stepped down on Wednesday. During his tenure, he cracked down on Chinese telecom giants like Huawei and ZTE. Last month, the FCC began the process of revoking China Telecom's authorization to operate in the US. Pai said on Tuesday the Chinese Communist Party has a very determined worldview, and they want to dominate this space and exert their will even beyond their own borders. Under his leadership, Huawei and ZTE were designated national security threats. This barred US firms from tapping into more than $8 billion of government funding to buy equipment from companies. Reporting by Patrick Hayden, NTD News.
A federal judge just rejected Parler's request to get Amazon to host their service. In the 14-page order, District Judge Barbara Jacobs-Rothstein, a Carter appointee, said that she wasn't throwing out the case based on its merits, but rather, Parler failed to demonstrate a few things. The district judge says Parler hasn't shown they could win on the merits of their claims or that public interest is involved in their request. Following in the footsteps of Apple and Google, Amazon Web Services abruptly cut off Parler, claiming they were suspended because they showed unwillingness and inability to remove violent content. The case against Amazon Web Services is still ongoing after the dismissal of this motion. And it looks like online harassment has gotten worse in the US, and we don't have many tools to fix it. NTD's Don Tran talked to a social media professor about the issue he calls a no-win situation.
When it comes to using social media, online harassment is not going away anytime soon. According to a Pew Research Center survey, 4 out of every 10 Americans say they experience online harassment. Online harassment didn't change in regularity since 2017, but it did in terms of intensity. Severe forms increased by 25%. These include physical threats, stalking, and sexual harassment. Andrew Selapak, a social media professor at the University of Florida, agrees online harassment has increased, particularly on Twitter. He said since Twitter allows for users to be anonymous and engage with strangers, it creates more opportunity for cyberbullying.
It's supposed to create a sort of environment where we have an open dialogue, but what it's instead created, because of our offline environment, because of the divisiveness in our politics, it's created this environment where it's very much about fighting. It's very much about anger and expressing your anger and disagreeing with people, sometimes vehemently disagreeing with people that have opinions that are different than your own. It's obviously going to lead to more bullying. It's going to lead to more problems and people being harassed. And that's sort of the opposite of what many people were hoping for with this platform of being able to express your views to people beyond your offline network.
Because it's a private company, Twitter does have the power to take down certain users and delete posts. But Selapak said the way they go about it is arbitrary and concerning. An example he brought up was how President Trump's account was suspended for allegedly inciting violence, while far-right activist Richard Spencer, who also allegedly incited violence, didn't have his account taken down.
Spencer's allowed to maintain his account, is allowed to keep his account. Again, we're talking about a right-wing person, but then the President of the United States, or the now former President of the United States, had his account taken down. So I think a lot of people are just confused as to how Twitter is making these decisions, how Twitter's deciding this person's account isn't allowed, this person's voice isn't allowed, while someone else's.
The professor also said Twitter's selective way of moderating takes away freedom of speech and access to differing views.
It's gotten to a point where social media is this kind of no man's land. If we don't know what we can say, what we can't say, what will get you banned, what won't get you banned, because the platforms can make a decision at any moment of what is bannable, what is not bannable. And at the same time, we as users are kind of just stuck in the middle. We have to deal with the terms of service. We have to deal with the harassment. We have to deal with the problems on these platforms if we want to use them.
Selapak suggests that people go on social media less. When they do use it, they should do it with the purpose of promoting what he says the platform is for, to uplift people and exchange ideas. Reporting by Don Tran, NTD News.
Could we see people traveling on President Donald J. Trump Highway? Florida Representative Anthony Sabatini is proposing to rename Route 27. He says Highway 27 runs through the heartland of Florida, where the president is residing. Representative Sabatini says this is to honor one of the greatest presidents in American history. and many people flocking to Tennessee. The state is now #1 in U-Haul's migration growth ranking. NTD's Don Tran talked to some experts about what this means for the state's residents and its economy.
Americans moving to Tennessee in droves. According to U-Haul's numbers, the volunteer state had the highest net gain of one-way U-Haul trucks entering a state in a calendar year. This speaks to a larger trend. More and more people have been moving to southern states like Florida and Texas. President of the Pyramid Real Estate Group, Peter Gray, said it's because southern states are less expensive to live in.
There's a very low cost of living in Tennessee. It's 14% lower than the national average. Also, Tennessee is retirement friendly. There's no income tax on Social Security or retirement account income. Also, the real estate tax is particularly low in Tennessee, and that's caused an influx of retirees into the state.
Southern states are appealing in other ways as well. John Boyd, the CEO of a corporate site selection company, said there's more freedom and flexibility.
These are states that offer lifestyle amenities that people find attractive, like open spaces and proximity to different nightlife activities. And there are also states that, by and large, avoid the types of draconian lockdowns that we're seeing in New York and in California.
The growing number of residents also attracts companies. For example, Alliance Bernstein opened a new office in Nashville, while Volkswagen expanded in East Tennessee.
All parts of the state are attracting a new industry. There's a lot of exciting new development activity. This high in-migration really has improved the state intellectual capital, the talent assets, and the state economic development officials can really market Tennessee really as a premier labor market.
But this rush to the south could be bad news from a real estate standpoint, as prices of homes in southern states have been going up.
And one of the results in that is there's a tremendous decrease in the affordability, which ultimately, after in the case of Texas, I think we're starting to see that, although I'm not sure if it's that or it's COVID. But ultimately, that will slow growth and limit the potential.
But the increase in housing developments will increase wages for blue-collar workers like plumbers and construction workers. Some experts warn southern states that they shouldn't raise taxes and implement failed business policies. Don Tran, NTD News.
After the break, New York City is running out of vaccine doses. Governor Cuomo is telling healthcare facilities not to schedule any new appointments until they stock more. And another lawsuit is filed against California's governor. Bay Area restaurants are suing him for banning in-person dining.
We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. The Epoch Times is independent. We're not controlled by any special interests, and we never will be. The Epoch Times is a non-partisan media. That means we don't stand for any political party. This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would ensnare this country in ignorance, and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
Vaccines are getting distributed across the nation, but New York City is facing some challenges. The city has to cancel thousands of vaccination appointments due to low supply.
New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio is warning New Yorkers that the city will begin to run out of vaccine doses this Thursday. This is because the city has not been able to secure more doses to meet the demand.
We will have literally nothing left to give as of Friday. What does that mean? It means if we don't get more vaccine quickly, a new supply of vaccine, we will have to cancel appointments and no longer give shots after Thursday for the remainder of the week at a lot of our sites.
New York City has closed 15 of its vaccination sites. These sites are expected to remain closed until at least the end of the week.
It's all about supply and the reliability of supply. We want those big sites to be up and running, and we want a lot of them to be 24/7. The demand is there. We have the staff. We have the sites. We just need the vaccine.
The city is postponing some 23,000 vaccination appointments because of the shortage. Appointments for first doses this week will be rescheduled for next week. Appointments for second doses are not affected.
What's clear now is we're going to be going from week to week. And you will see a constant pattern of basically running out, waiting for the next week's allocation, and then starting up again.
An estimated 500,000 New Yorkers are already vaccinated. Tens of thousands are getting vaccinated each day. Due to the low supply, the New York Police Department is also suspending first-dose vaccinations for its officers.
California's governor faces another lawsuit. Bay Area restaurants are suing him for unfair outdoor dining regulations. NTD's Eileen Ang has more on the story.
Bay Area restaurants and wineries are suing Governor Gavin Newsom and the California State Public Health Officer Tomas Aragon for banning outdoor dining, calling it arbitrary, irrational, and unfair. Collectively called the Wine Country Coalition for Safe Reopening, they filed the complaint on Tuesday, January 19th. It states that the plaintiffs have invested millions of dollars adapting to the state's roller coaster of COVID guidance, and that the prohibitions have caused them much harm to the livelihoods of employees and the industry. At a Reopen California Now conference earlier this month, restaurant owners talked about their struggles.
We've done temperatures, we've got social distancing, masks, glass, places where people have to stand, they can't come inside. This is getting crazy. This is getting to where I'm gonna have to let more people go and close my doors if something doesn't change. We gotta stand up, we gotta fight, we gotta do what's right here. We have to still know that this is real. It's totally real. But we also have to be real about this is gonna be economic suicide for us.
I'm in a location right now that is completely dark. As you can see here, when business should be booming. We're here on a Thursday afternoon, and I've got a restaurant bar that is completely empty and dark. I know we'll be getting through this lockdown. When is the question? But it's hard to get texts every other week asking how we're going to pay our payroll from my accountant, asking how we're going to pay some bills. So it's kind of been draining my savings.
I had a mom come in with her 14-year-old daughter who told me together that I could share that the daughter had just been released from the hospital with attempted suicide. And the daughter said, I just want to go somewhere where I can feel normal. Right now, we have an opportunity to be that resource, to be that hope for our community. That's why it's so vital that we stay open.
The coalition consists of over 50 restaurants, wineries, tasting rooms, and suppliers across Napa and Sonoma counties. There's also support from several members around the Bay Area. Reporting by Eileen Eng, NTD News, Santa Clara, California.
If you're like me, and I think it's actually most of us, then you're getting really fed up with the nonsense going on inside the banking system. I mean, we've worked hard our entire lives to retire comfortably. We just recovered from the crash of 2008, and it seems like it's about to happen all over again. Look at the too-big-to-fail banks. They're only getting bigger as the Fed hands them trillions of dollars daily, while simple folks like you and me, we're only getting the short end of the stick. That's why I'm glad I found this book called The Bank Failure Survival Guide. Give us a call, and we'll send you a free copy with no obligations whatsoever. Just one American to another, telling you about some options that you might not have considered. Call 866-239-2619 today for your free copy of the Bank Failure Survival Guide. That's 866-239-2619.
90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. This is a battle between truth and deceit. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
Trends may be fleeting, but values are timeless. We now bring you this new clothing brand with classic design and luxurious comfort. It's our way of sharing hope and inspiration from the world of Shenyun. We bring you Shenyun Dancer. Wear it with honor.
Beijing stayed busy during Biden's inauguration. The regime leveled sanctions on former Trump administration officials. What's the new administration's response? NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more.
The Biden administration called China's recent move to sanction former Trump administration officials unproductive and cynical. The Chinese regime sanctioned outgoing Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and 27 other Trump officials. It banned them from entering China and restricted companies tied to them from doing business in China. President Biden's National Security Council spokeswoman told Reuters that by imposing these sanctions on Inauguration Day, the Chinese regime may attempt to play to partisan divides. The administration urged Americans from both parties to condemn the move. Now we take a look at the CCP virus pandemic in China's capital. Over 1.6 million residents are barred from leaving Beijing right now. The restriction targets a district in Beijing called Daxing. This comes after new CCP virus cases emerged in the area. Beijing is a city of 21 million. Daxing district is now under strict lockdown. A nearby subway station is shut down. All businesses are closed and residents are undergoing mass nucleic acid tests. And Beijing authorities have extended the quarantine period. People arriving in Beijing from overseas now have to be quarantined for at least 20 days. Over 300,000 migrant workers are also barred from entering Beijing. They are stranded in a small town just outside the city and are blocked from entering the capital city as the outbreak worsens in their locality.
A Chinese messaging app is reportedly reading private information on people's computers. One user says it even uploads some of that data to the web. NTD's Don Ma has more on the details.
One messaging app is stuck in the spotlight in mainland China. That's because the app secretly reads users' internet browsing history. The app is called QQ. It's a messaging software made by Chinese tech giant Tencent. It boasts users in the US, China, and other countries. One user in mainland China discovered the secret function on Monday. His computer's antivirus software revealed it to him. Antivirus software can search out suspicious activities on a computer. It revealed that QQ software had looked through all of his internet browsing history. He says QQ has been doing this for more than a year. Through a simple analysis of the software, another user made an even more startling discovery. Not only does it read users' history, but will also upload data to the web. That's including personal shopping history. The user didn't say where the information was sent. In a response, Tencent apologized and admitted that QQ does read browser history of users. But the tech giant claims it's to analyze security risks relating to the user's account. QQ has faced scrutiny in the past relating to security concerns. Just last week, former US President Donald Trump banned the use of QQ Wallet in the US, an online payment service app. He says the app continues to threaten the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States. QQ has also been criticized for its compliance with the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, and its internet surveillance censorship. A report by Reporters Without Borders, an organization dedicated to the freedom of information, says QQ has allowed Chinese authorities to monitor online conversations and track users. In one case in 2017, authorities used a QQ post to track down and arrest the poster. A business professor at a Chinese college was sentenced to more than 3 years in prison for posting images relating to the Falun Gong spiritual group. The practice is currently deemed illegal by the CCP. In 2018, QQ reported roughly 800 million active users worldwide. That's more than twice that of Twitter. Don Ma, NTD News.
Coming up, a successful investor warns about the danger of the Fed flooding the market with cheap money. He says investors are like frogs in boiling water.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy? Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3. Puritan green vegetable omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals, especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9. It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health. Puritan omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritan green vegetable omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new.
Hedge fund founder and value investment guru Seth Klarman says central bank and government stimulus has broken the stock market and eroded price discovery. He says investors aren't able to see risk building because the Fed's interventions are papering over the cracks. NTD's Tom Ozimek reports.
The founder of hedge fund Baupost Group, Seth Klarman, told clients that the flood of central bank stimulus and cheap money has convinced investors that risk has vanished, eroding the market's role as a mechanism of price discovery. Klarman called the Fed an 800-pound gorilla that has conditioned investors to ignore risk. He said the biggest problem with these unprecedented and sustained government and central bank interventions is that risks to capital become masked even as they mount. The comments come as the real economy continues to sputter. Another 900,000 Americans filed for unemployment last week, and only about half the jobs lost during the pandemic have been recovered. Yet the U.S. stock markets are breaking new all-time highs. Klarman said, but as with frogs in water that is slowly being heated to a boil, investors are being conditioned not to recognize the danger. He says another problem with this is widening the wealth gap. Those at the top who have large exposure to stock markets have seen their wealth skyrocket, while those at the bottom who have few financial assets remain at a standstill. He also said that, while the interventions have helped boost economic activity and prevented an even more dramatic labor market collapse, they have also piled on more debt for future generations to pay down. Reporting by Tom Ozimek, NTD News.
Have you ever wanted to own a decommissioned train car? A popular transit system in California's Bay Area is donating its legacy vehicles as it brings in new cars. Our reporter David Lamb brings us more.
Bay Area Rapid Transit, also known as Bart, has carried passengers in the Bay Area for nearly 50 years. Recently, it plans to donate its decommissioned fleet cars, most of which would be recycled for parts. Bart is replacing them with its new Fleet of the Future cars. On January 19th, Bart accepted applications for people who want to reuse its legacy cars. Several proposed ideas to give the cars a new life include art purposes, restaurant use, or even homeless shelters. The applicant is responsible for transportation costs. That's estimated to cost $8 to $10 grand per car. Qualification is based on respecting Bart's brand and how the car would finally be disposed of once no longer used. As of January 20th, Bart ridership is at 42,000 riders, which is down 89% from its pre-COVID numbers. Bart's first round of deadline is March 12th. It expects to donate the cars to qualified applicants in 2022. David Lamb, NTD News, Santa Clara, California.
A Japanese startup has designed a wearable device to let you sit while standing. It'll help those who need to stand for long hours, and it doesn't need any power.
The Exoskeleton lets you sit while standing. It straps to the legs and disperses your body weight, making standing easier and less tiring.
Our product is an exoskeleton that helps to reduce the burden on the legs and waist for people who work long hours. The advantages of our product are it allows people to walk or move while wearing it, and people can put it on easily regardless of their body shape or size.
It can be used by factory workers, surgeons, chefs, hairdressers, or anyone who has to stand for hours in one place. It's lightweight and all mechanical.
Another advantage is that the product can be used without a power source.
The device is scheduled for a market release in January 2021. It'll retail for around $5,000.
Up next, Twitter is under scrutiny in the UK. UK lawmakers say banning former President Trump but allowing the Chinese embassy's posts on forced labor on the platform is a clear double standard. The UK and the EU are having a dispute over EU ambassadors' diplomatic status in the UK. The UK says the EU is not a nation, but an organization. Find out more after the break.
Are you looking for a news source that does not spin the truth, doesn't push any false narratives, and instead presents you with the facts and lets you make up your own mind? Then go to readepic.com and try the Epic Times newspaper for yourself. It's pure honest journalism that's based in traditional values.
Over to Europe. Storm Christoph sweeps through the UK, leaving some regions in northwest England and Wales flooded, with hundreds of residents evacuated. NTD UK's Neil Woodrow will bring us more news from Europe.
Hello and welcome. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson visits a flood-hit area in northwest England to see the impact of Storm Christoph. England has nearly 400 active flood alerts and warnings in place. NTD's Earl Rhodes has more.
Running through the area is the River Mersey. Its extremely high water levels are flooding nearby streets and fields. Hundreds of residents were evacuated overnight. Johnson praised the Environment Agency for its work.
10,000 homes in the Manchester area and the Disby area have been protected just as a result of what they've been doing overnight.
The Environment Agency's website shows that England has nearly 400 flood warnings or alerts, including 3 severe warnings. The weather forecast says there's more rain coming next week.
So it's vital that people who are in potentially affected areas follow the advice and get the Environment Agency flood alerts where they can.
Videos posted on Twitter show water racing through another town in the area. The BBC reports that 49 residents and staff at a retirement village in that town are stranded by the floods. Wales has over 60 flood warnings and alerts, including 2 severe warnings. The area near a CCP virus vaccine factory is flooded, but the site is operating as normal. Earl Rhodes, NTD News.
The British Embassy in Beijing issues a second article refuting China's 6 public statements on Hong Kong-related topics, calling them misleading. The UK is providing a bespoke immigration route for eligible British nationals overseas from Hong Kong. China says the Sino-British Joint Declaration provides no right or entitlement for the UK to interfere in Hong Kong after 1997. The British Embassy says the Joint Declaration remains a legally binding international agreement, and China made a legally binding commitment to the UK to ensure the rights and freedoms of the people of Hong Kong. So the UK has the right to hold China to this commitment. Twitter is under scrutiny in the UK after permanently deleting former US President Donald Trump's account, but allowing tweets from the Chinese embassy that justify an alleged genocide. Our UK correspondent Jane Werrell has the details.
The entire internet into that.
Top Twitter chief Nick Pickles faced tough questions at a Wednesday committee meeting, challenging the platform over its alleged inconsistencies.
So on one hand, you have President Trump's account suspended for inciting violence. Fine. But on the other hand, your platform continues to allow a platform to embassies of the Chinese government based all over the world to defend and justify the violence and the genocide which they are carrying out against their own people.
Pickles noted the explicit label on accounts run by state media and governments. He says removing Twitter accounts to protest against censorship in China doesn't further public conversation.
The fact that this conversation is happening in public on Twitter, I think gives us a greater global public conversation to hold governments like the Chinese government to account.
Edwards mentioned a retweet from the Chinese embassy in the UK that claims forced labour is the biggest lie of the century, aimed to restrict and suppress the relevant Chinese authorities and companies and contain China's development. Pickles says that particular tweet doesn't violate the company's rules. According to reports, Twitter did lock the account of China's US embassy several days ago. It follows a post defending China's policy toward Uyghurs in Xinjiang, claiming Uyghur women were no longer baby-making machines. Beijing says it was confused by the restrictions. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
UK's Foreign Office refuses to grant the full diplomatic status and privileges to EU ambassadors after Brexit. According to a BBC report, Britain's refusal is because London doesn't want to set a precedent for others by treating an international body in the same way as a nation state. Meanwhile, the EU says it is not a typical international organisation and claims that the UK was supportive of the policy when they were an EU member. EU passes a resolution halting the completion of Nord Stream 2. The undersea gas pipeline from Russia to Germany aims to double capacity upon completion. The resolution was in response to the arrest of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny, and it has divided the EU. Some EU members say the pipe will undermine Ukraine and increase the EU's energy reliance on Russia. German Chancellor Angela Merkel says she continues to back the project despite Navalny's arrest. The US says it will place sanctions on the constructing ship, which the Kremlin is calling unlawful. In the egg industry, billions of male chicks are culled each year worldwide, but a new bill would end the practice in Germany. NTD's Trevor Piper has the story.
About 45 million male chicks are killed each year in Germany after hatching because they don't produce eggs and generate little meat. But by the end of this year, Germany wants to be the first country in the world to ban the practice.
Germany is leading the way in animal welfare. France has announced that it will follow us, as have other countries in the EU.
2 years ago, a German court ruled the killing as permissible under animal welfare law as long as there was no practical way to find out the sex of an unhatched chick. This is about to change as a government-funded initiative has now found a way through analysing reflected light sent into the egg.
That is why it is a good day, on the one hand for animal welfare, but on the other hand also for the breeders that they also have alternatives.
The legislation still needs to be approved by Germany's lower house of parliament. Trevor Piper, NTD News.
The organisers of this year's London Marathon say 50,000 runners are expected to tackle the course on the city streets, while another 50,000 will compete in a remote race. With a national vaccination drive underway, organisers hope to have 50,000 runners for the traditional race on October 3rd. The virtual marathon allows participants to run on a 26.2-mile course of their choice, but they must complete it on October 3rd. A virtual London Marathon was held for the first time last year after the actual race was cancelled due to the CCP virus pandemic. Nearly 38,000 runners took part to set a Guinness World Record for the most people participating in a remote marathon in 24 hours. That's all for now. Back to New York.
Up next, a skydive team gets a taste of what it feels like to fly down one of the most extreme ski courses in the world. And Kenya's government is working to give the mountain bongo species a boost. Together with other groups, they're aiming to reintroduce it to the wild. More on that when we return.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and bite-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format, where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
Ski stars from around the world are set to tackle an infamous course in Austria starting January 22nd. A skydive team dropped in on the slopes for a taste of what it feels like to fly down the course.
Hurling past trees and barriers, 4 daredevils executed a world-first flight over a legendary downhill course. Having watched races there while growing up in Austria, one of them said that while flying down, he realized how difficult the course really is.
The fact that we can fly down the course with the wingsuit just shows how steep the whole thing must be for the skiers, and it must be brutal to ski down there. It's the toughest race in the world for a reason.
The skydivers dropped out of a helicopter from over 8,000 feet. The wingsuit pilots flew through steep canyons while the paragliders focused their speed parachutes on the sweeping tracks. Marco said he expected the task to be easier.
The track to fly down with the wingsuit and the high-speed canopy is pretty tricky because there are a lot of obstacles in the track, in the strive. So we had to focus to fly really clean.
The skydivers got to a speed of almost 40 miles per hour in less than 1 second, reaching speeds of more than 150 miles per hour.
The mountain bongo is a forest antelope native to Kenya, Africa. Kenya's government, together with other groups, is working to give this species a boost and reintroduce it to the wild.
These elusive creatures picking their way through the undergrowth are mountain bongos. The white-striped, spiral-horned, coppery red forest antelopes can only be found in the wild in Kenya.
The mountain bongo is a very special species and it's endemic to Kenya, highly endangered, less than 100 individuals known to be left out in the wild.
In a bid to boost the recovery of the species in the wild, Kenya launched a bongo sanctuary. The sanctuary is an 800-acre indigenous forest area located in the slopes of Mount Kenya.
Ultimately, what needs to be done is their habitat has to be highly protected, and these are the highland forests, so it won't be much use if we rear them successfully, but we end up with no appropriate habitat in which to release them, because I think the objective here is not captivity, but to bolster wild populations and rewild them and reintroduce them into this country.
There are plans to release 25 mountain bongos into this protected area. This will help the breeding program and help with reintroducing them into their original habitat.
Breeders in Russia are growing the family of a new breed of dog from a mix including the German Shepherd and a Husky.
Haromangfjoktis dog named Voi is a German Shepherd and Wolf mix. Foy was bred with other dog breeds, including a Husky, West Siberian Lika, and a Canadian Shepherd mix. Today, this white husky-like dog breed is known as Svoyator's Voi, which translates to Holy Russia Howl. The Svoyator's Voi breed was registered on July 3, 2020.
Here is our wonderful, lovely Voi, which means warrior. It is the standard breed of the area. You can see it has a strong chest, powerful legs, wide, strong, muscular.
The dogs live at a special center in the Samara region of southwestern Russia. The idea was to revive something similar to an ancient Russian breed. The center focuses on ancient Russian history, including the lives of Russian warriors.
These dogs even fought in battles. When they had to face the enemy, they would help the warriors. If several enemies were attacking a warrior, they would distract them, so they would be able to cope with each of them in turn.
There are currently more than 50 Svoyator's Vois in the area. This is the 5th generation. Some have already gone to new owners. The rest live here at Sloboda, where they are looked after. The dogs are given old Russian names such as Slovena, Kriv, Mikula, and Poliana. They are good working and guard dogs, but are also sociable. Next spring, the 6th generation of this breed is due to be born. The cost of a puppy of a Svoyator's Voi varies between $68 and $410.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.
Hi, we're happy to announce that you can also catch us on cable TV now. Millions of households already choose us as one of their trusted news sources, and you can too. You can watch us in Chicago, Washington, D.C., New York, and many other cities as well. And if your system doesn't carry NTD yet, you can just give them a quick call and request NTD on your cable provider.